Why do some people seem to thrive in the face of adversity while others struggles to overcome it? Have you ever wondered how some individuals turn their trauma into a source of strength and resilience? Does adversity have the potential to become a superpower? And your greatest challenges the catalyst for unlocking your superpower of resilience? Are you ready to unlock your inner resilience and turn your trauma into a superpower? Join me after the intro for a conversation with a very special friend with whom we will answer this and many more questions. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's start. Hi, I'm Rossana D, and this is Forgive and Thrive, a podcast where we explore what thriving in life means and how we can achieve it, irrespective of our past, current condition, and expectations that those around us or society in general may have. Let's go. Welcome to the Forgive and Thrive show. Navigating trauma is not a walk in the park. Each twist and turn presents new challenges and obstacles. It's a journey fraught with complexity, often leaving us feeling lost, overwhelmed, and utterly alone. At the heart of these challenges lies the profound impact trauma can have on one's sense of self that leaves behind a fragmented and wounded soul, where anxiety, depression, PTSD, intrusive thoughts, and a host of other psychological disorders can take root, trapping individuals in a perpetual cycle of anguish and despair. And then misunderstanding, stigma, and societal judgment can further isolate us, exacerbating feelings of alienation and hopelessness. The feeling of being powerless can be overwhelming. It is as if the trauma hijacks one's sense of agency, leaving us adrift in a sea of uncertainty and overly exposed vulnerability. And yet, despite the seemingly insurmountable nature of these challenges, there is hope. So today we peel back the layers of resilience, exploring its essence and uncovering the story of someone who has harnessed its power to overcome life's greatest challenges. Today we delve into the transformative journey of turning trauma into a superpower. And we dive into this fascinating topic in a conversation with today's guest, Kari Berridge. Kari is a dedicated mother, proud grandma, accomplished fitness coach, successful business owner, and inspiring author. In her compelling book, Cut the Anchor, Kari shares her powerful life journey. While battling pervasive feelings of self-doubt, Kari navigated anorexia and depression, survived sexual assault, endured toxic relationships, faced infidelity, survived a suicide attempt, and experienced 2 failed marriages and single parenting. Not only did she break free from the grip of negative self-beliefs, she also dedicated herself to the hard work required to become the remarkable woman she is today. Hi, Kari. Welcome to the Forgive and Try show. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Beautiful. Well, I'm very eager to start this conversation because trauma is not something that we want to talk about. Adversity is not something we want to talk about. And yet, most of us go through trauma, go through adversity in their lives. And sometimes we don't have the tools, the right tools to deal with it. So I'm really happy to have you on the show to talk about this very important topic. But before we go into that, I would like to start with you because I only mentioned a few things about your bio and your life story. And I would like to hear about that with your own words.
Yeah, so my story basically begins with limiting self-beliefs. And you'll see me twitching. So I have Tourette syndrome. It came out when around the age of 5. But I didn't know I had Tourette syndrome until I was 27. So I didn't know why I did all the things that I was doing. And then I also, and I'll circle back to that in a second, but I also had ADHD growing up. And I didn't know until a year ago. And I'm almost 57. And so I lived my whole life with both of these things, not knowing that I had anything. And so I had no self-confidence, no self-esteem. In school, I could read the same paragraph literally 50 times and I would still not know what I read. And so I felt stupid my whole life, but I knew deep down inside that I was actually really, really smart. It's just with learning the way, especially at my age, there was no alternative way to learning. It was you sit in your seat, you do your work, and you go home and you do homework. And so I just completely felt stupid my whole life. And that plays on a person when you can't understand things like other people can understand. Or there was so many more things, like I interrupt people, I talk a lot, I talk out my feelings, I can't sit still, I hyper focus, all these things that I had no idea why I was doing them. And I'm a type of person, once I understand why, then I can deal with it so much better. And I just didn't know why I was doing these things. And so, for with my Tourette's, I got picked on in school, but I didn't know why I was doing these things. So I have one memory, I have many, but one memory would be in my parents' car when we were driving somewhere. And I would keep saying to myself, between light posts, don't twitch, don't twitch, don't twitch. And of course, I couldn't make it from light post to light post because you can't control Tourette's. And then I would beat myself up and say, you're a loser. You can't even not, twitch for 2 seconds. And so it was just that negative self-talk that just absolutely destroyed me.
Mm. I mean, growing up, it must have been really, really difficult as a child and then teenager going through that situation, perhaps in school with other children, because they don't know any better. They can be very cruel sometimes.
Yes. And I'm lucky that I was fairly popular in school, but I still got teased. So if I wasn't popular, it would have even been worse. And you're right. I mean, they just didn't know. And even adults, stare at people that twitch or, stare at people that do things that are different than them. And I call it a difference, not a disability. And then my sister was very, very smart growing up. And she read all the time and she was very smart. And so I felt even more stupid living in a house where someone was so intelligent. I remember in grade 12, my mom put me into a speed reading class just so I could, get through the exams. And truth be told, I cheated on my English and social grade 12 diploma exams because I knew I couldn't read and understand what was being asked in the amount of time that was allotted. It just doesn't work for my brain. And so you add all that and not understand. At least if I knew I had it, then there would have been tools, but I didn't even know there was anything wrong with me until a year ago I got diagnosed. So everything makes a lot more sense now. And I'm actually glad that I got diagnosed because my life just completely makes sense now.
You mentioned growing up with your sister, very smart young lady. Comparison is something that really affects us growing up, especially when there are conditions, when there are difficulties and challenges. Was there a turning point in your own journey of healing and saying, you know what, I might have this challenge, but I'm smart. I can do things.
Yes, actually, the turning point was just only a year and a half ago because I'm a perfectionist, and these are all things that I've learned come with Tourette's and ADHD. So I'm a perfectionist. I have to have everything, perfect all the time. My bar is so high for myself and others. I have a very high bar that I'm trying to, reach, and then I expect it from others, which is not fair. And so I've learned that along the way that bar should only be for me. So my aha moment was basically a year and a half ago. And so to switch gears a little bit, limiting self-beliefs can really destroy a life. They really can. And it almost destroyed mine. And so because I had no confidence, no belief in myself, thought I was stupid. And I don't like that word, but that's how I felt. So I'm going to use it, but I don't really like the word stupid, but I felt that way. And I felt no one liked me, even though I was, I had a lot of friends, I was popular, but I still felt no one liked me. And I felt I didn't fit in, and I felt I wasn't as liked, in my own family, that my brother and sister were liked more. And it was always this comparison thing, which I found out is from ADHD and Tourette's. But the limiting self-beliefs just led me down a really bad path. I say I made every wrong mistake that I could make in my 20s and early 30s. I made it. If there was a fork in the road, the right way, the wrong way, I took the wrong way every time. And it was just because I didn't believe in myself. Deep down, I think I did, but on the surface, I didn't believe in myself. And something happened 35 years ago. I I was with a man who had cheated on me 35 times. And so I was just add that to already not thinking I'm good enough. I was anorexic at the time. I had postpartum depression that turned into depression. And so this man had cheated on me so many times that I ended up having a one-time affair. I found out I was pregnant 3 months later. I didn't know who the father was. I was devastated. And so I lived my life as if the man I was with was her dad. And so because of the limiting self-beliefs and because I didn't, I was so hard on myself and I didn't believe in myself and I didn't even like myself. I actually hated myself for years. And with that secret being deep down inside, I just carried that secret around for 35 years. I had so much blame and shame and guilt inside because I didn't know that I wasn't truly living. And I kept getting into toxic relationships with men and with female friend groups. I allowed people to treat me horribly because I didn't love myself. I was angry at myself for this secret. And so a year and a half ago, the secret came out. My daughter did a genealogy test, found out she had a match as a sister. And so therefore she found her dad, which is the man I had the affair with. And so my daughter has not talked to me since that day. So it's been a year and a half, just over a year and a half. And I've not seen her or my grandkids. She wants nothing to do with me. So that night that she found out, I actually tried to take my life. Thank the good Lord, it didn't work. And the next 4 days later, I had already signed up for a self-development course. And so I made that trip 4 days later and I was in the seats. And I spent the next year and a half learning to love myself, learning to believe in myself, and ultimately, the most important, learning to forgive myself, my 20-year-old self that made a mistake, because we all make mistakes. And so I have grown immensely in this last year and a half. I have put every ounce of my being into getting better. And I wrote a book with all of that in it.
Wow. Well, first and foremost, I'm truly sorry that you had to experience all these situations, and that relationship right now with your daughter is unfortunately stand still. I'm sure with time things will get better. But I applaud you for being here today and for sharing this story, because there are so many other people that perhaps are going through similar situations. The details, the specifics might be different, but the challenges, the emotional challenges might be very similar. And I think it's really inspiring to see that it is possible to stand up, come out of these difficult situations, and put yourself together and live, a good life afterwards, right? So with that in mind, what the word resilience really mean to you today,
So,
after
yeah.
all these situations?
So resilience to me means the ability to recover quickly from what you go through. That's what resilience means to me, is we all go through things, but it's how long do we stay down for? I don't mean something bad happens and you bury it and you continue on with life as if it didn't happen. I don't mean that. I mean, how quickly can you recover from something by setting up tools for yourself or a system for yourself that you can get out of that intact? That's resilience to me. I'm actually glad, this is going to kind of sound funny, but I'm actually, that moment had to happen. My daughter had to find out because I was slowly dying. I was not living. For 35 years, I did not live. I look at pictures of myself from before and I look dead inside. Even though I thought I was happy and I might be smiling in the picture, but my eyes, I feel the eyes tell it all. And my eyes were sad. I was going on a very bad path. And I truly wasn't living. So this is the way I live my life. And I think this is where my resilience comes in. Every bad thing that has happened to me, I take a good from it, because I don't want situations to happen in life and me not learn something from it. I don't want to go through a bad situation and learn nothing from it. There's a reason that bad thing happened. So for me, yes, trying to commit suicide was horrible. Having my daughter not in my life is horrible. However, in order for me to thrive and to live the authentic life I was put here on earth to do, that had to happen. So as much as I want my daughter in my life, I still believe what happened had to happen because she needs to heal and I needed to heal and I needed to forgive myself. And that was the biggest thing. So that's what resilience is to me. Again, not there's a difference between shoving it down, which is what I did for 35 years, shove it down, shove it down, shove it down, add more stuff on top. That's not resilience. Resilience is how fast can you get yourself out of it with tools without like just with forgiving yourself, forgiving your child self, forgiving yourself now, and then having tools to move forward and thrive.
You mentioned a couple of words here that for me are very important: forgive and thrive. And it's not by chance that these are actually the two words that make the name of this podcast. So I'm jumping into that straight away. So asking, is forgiveness a necessary step for healing and thriving after trauma?
1000%, in my opinion. Because, so a couple things. I needed, I've said this, but I needed to forgive myself. Because when you carry around something that you've done, it doesn't matter what the issue is. But if you don't forgive yourself, truly forgive yourself, and I don't mean, yeah, I forgive myself. I mean, do the work. Do the work and forgive yourself for whatever mistake you made, but learn from it and move on. And so it's huge. So not only did I have to forgive myself, I have forgiven my daughter for not allowing me to see the kids. And that was a huge one because I wasn't getting it at first. I was like, I hurt you, I didn't hurt the kids. Why are you not letting me see the kids? Like I was trying to, process that in my head. But those are her kids. She wants to keep her kids safe. If she doesn't feel I'm a safe person to be around because I lied, that's her business. And she's allowed that. And so I have forgiven her for not allowing me to see the kids because she needs her time. And if it takes 5 years, it takes 5 years. Is it hurtful? Yes. I'm very sad. But I'm allowing her to go through the journey that I took 35 years to go through. I can't expect her to go through that in a couple months. And so I have forgiven her. I've forgiven myself. I've forgiven my dad because there was a lot of, growing up, I felt not very loved and stuff. And I now know I totally was loved. It just not the way I needed to be loved. I wasn't loved through my eyes, but now I see it differently. And I know I was loved, but I had to do a lot of forgiving. I think it's super important. And a lot of people just forgive others. They forget you have to forgive yourself too. That was the biggest one for me.
Yes, self-forgiveness I find more difficult, strangely enough, than forgiving someone else.
Yeah.
Because I suppose it requires taking responsibility for your own actions. That's tough. And I applaud you for taking that responsibility. That is not something that we go into so easily and so quickly. You mentioned a few words that I would like to go back to. You mentioned boundaries. You mentioned self-love. Didn't love yourself. You didn't think that you were smart enough, for example.
Yeah.
You also mentioned how to take the good out of any challenge that we are presented. What would you say are strategies that we can use to cultivate resilience on one end and overcome that challenge? Because it's easier when you are on the other side and perhaps you have started your recovery journey already. But when you are in the midst of that situation, saying, oh, there is good in this, it's very hard, isn't it? So are there some strategies that perhaps you use or you suggest to others that can help us navigating that moment?
Yes. So some tools that I've actually recently learned, because the forgiveness at first had to be with myself. And so what I was taught was to get a picture of yourself when you were younger and like print it out or have it on your phone, but have it where you can look at it. And when certain things come up, tell that picture, which is yourself, you know, things like, you didn't deserve to be treated that way. You didn't deserve to be ignored. You are lovable. You should have been loved. You should have been cared about. You are great. You are perfect just the way you are. All these things, and it's very hard to do at first, but you're just telling that inner child, because that's where a lot of our problems stem from, is that inner child, and that negative self-talk or the limiting self-beliefs comes from childhood. And so if you can get a picture and just talk to that child like you would talk to another little child, make that child like pretend it's somebody else, but really talk to that child and nurture that child. So that was number one, and that really helped me. Number two, I'm huge on baby steps, big, like small wins. Everybody wants to talk about the big wins, but what about those little wins? If getting out of bed today was your biggest win, put that down, celebrate that. So many times we look at what we are not doing. Oh, I only got out of bed today. I didn't even have a shower. Well, when you're in the midst of a huge depression, having a shower is the last thing you think about. Getting out of bed, you don't even want to do that. So if you can even get out of bed and put a house coat on, that's a win. It's the small wins that add up over time to big. It's the baby steps. Everybody wants to take it from here to here so fast, but how about those little baby steps? So gratitude books are huge. And so I remember way back, I write 3 things I'm grateful for every day now when I wake up. But it used to be where I made myself do one. And one might be, it's not snowing today. Or, oh, looking out the window, the sun is shining. That might be the only thing you are grateful for today. It might be, oh, I have running water. That's it. I have running water. I'm grateful I have running water. So it switches our brains into what we don't have, and it makes us realize what we do have, because we're all blessed with a lot. We just don't see it when we're in that, depressed state, or I hate life state, or I hate myself stage, or whatever we're in. And so the gratitude book was huge for me. Journaling, and I know everyone says, oh, everybody says journaling, but if you can do journaling in a way that helps you. And I learned this through my sister's cancer journey. I used to journal all the time, and then I would read it again. I'd read it back. So you just took what was toxic and you wrote it on the paper, and now you read it back, and now you put the toxic back into your body. So what they teach with the cancer journey is journal, write out your feelings, get it out. And then you burn it, you shred it, you throw it, like you rip it up, whatever. You don't read it and you don't put it back in your body. That was huge. Because a lot of times people don't want to journal because they are scared someone will read what they wrote, and it's personal stuff. So shred it, burn it, rip it. So that was massive. I learned that about 7 years ago. That was really big. So those would be my tools, I would say, is your baby steps. Acknowledge those small wins every day. Write in your gratitude book, even if it's one thing that you have a roof over your head. And then be journaling, and don't read it back. Is find, if you like to read, I found someone, Dan Millman, who really resonated with me. Now, he might not resonate with someone else. And, Eckhart Tolle is a good one. He didn't resonate with me, but I know others that he did resonate with. But find somebody that writes, self-help books, but that you resonate with. Because Dan Millman's books completely changed my life. And so those would be my tips.
Beautiful. And I like when you say, switching and finding something positive, even if it was just the sun is shining on the outside, which, if we want to take one step further, is reframing basically our narrative, right? It's a way to empower ourselves, right? And embrace whatever is happening as a source of strength, which is so difficult when we are in the midst of depression and anxiety and PTSD and, dealing with all those challenges, isn't it?
Yes. And one thing, actually, you mentioned that, one thing I learned in therapy back when I got out of the abusive relationship when I was 35, was instead of saying, I have ugly hair, for example, you could reframe it and say, I'm having a bad hair day. That completely changes your mindset. Or instead of saying, I'm a horrible mom, switch it and say, oh, I didn't have a very good mom moment right then. It's a different way to frame it. And I learned that through cognitive therapy. I was in a cognitive therapy test group back when I was diagnosed with postpartum depression. And those are the little tools we learned. And they're little, but they're massive. Change the way you're wording something when it's a negative and make it more of not so big, right? I'm having a bad mom moment. You're not a horrible mom. You just had a bad mom moment, right? So that really helped with when I was really depressed. That helped switching my thought process.
Absolutely. I went through depression myself, and every now and then there are moments where I feel a little bit more down. And this is really something that helps, because in that moment it feels that everything is black. And it's very, very difficult to come out of that situation and say, well, actually, it's not that black. Perhaps I can find the sun is shining right on the outside.
And the other thing, sorry to interrupt, the other thing too is, so just talking about depression, when we're depressed, the last thing we want to do is be around people. But what's the first thing we should do is be around people. And so another little tool that a person could do, because when you're in it, you're not thinking straight. So what I did was I typed out, maybe just 3 things that were really important for me to do when I was in that deep depression. And then I typed it out and I laminated it. So I had that right there like a bookmark. So when I got depressed, like when I was really depressed, I could look at those 3 things. I mean, don't do a lot because then it gets overwhelming. Just do 2 or 3 things. And then when you're in it, in that depression state, you can take that laminated bookmark and go, oh, right, I shouldn't be alone. I've got to make a phone call, and then have 3 names right there and their phone numbers right there. You don't even have to look them up. That you can just phone and say, hey, do you have 5 minutes to talk, right? Because if we don't have those steps, whatever your steps are, have 2 or 3, type them out, laminate them, and then have them with you, like somewhere in the house, so that when you're in that depressive state, you don't have to think to yourself, well, what should I be doing? Because you're too low. It's too hard to think at that time. So already have the process, like the systems in place. It doesn't make it easy. It just makes it easier. Go for a walk. That's something everyone could do, even for 5 minutes. Walk down the block and walk back. That alone gets you out of the house. And that 5 minutes outside can clear your mind a little bit. So again, baby steps. Don't have to go for an hour walk. 5 minutes down the block and back. That's another step you could put on there that would help.
Absolutely. Kari, you mentioned that you have been diagnosed about a year ago with ADHD, and you have also Tourette, I understand. You are also an advocate for neurodiversity. I don't want to go necessarily into the neurodiversity conversation, but how neurodiversity can make trauma and adversity more challenging, perhaps.
Yeah. So, well, so basically, without going into detail of each, but I have Tourette syndrome. So I call Tourette's the umbrella, and under the umbrella, I just did research the other day for a talk I'm doing, but you're 86% more likely, if you have Tourette syndrome, to have one or more of the following. And I have them all. So OCD, ODD, which is oppositional defiance disorder, anxiety disorder, sleep problems, social issues, and there was one more, I forget, but I have them all. And so there's more to each of them than I ever knew. So yes, Tourette syndrome, for example, is twitching, but it's so much more. You have lower self-esteem, you don't sleep, and then the not sleeping also goes with ADHD. So like I'm hit like from all directions with everything that I have. Because I didn't know I had 2 of them, I had to create coping strategies without even knowing why I was having to have these strategies in place. And so, for example, with ADHD, again, I just got diagnosed a year and a half ago, but I am so interested in this topic because it's huge. So, for example, I do much better on a Zoom call because I can see you. I can see you as we're talking. If it's by phone or if you send me, something to read, I get super anxiety because I don't understand what I've read. I don't understand what the person wants me to be understanding with the questions, for example. And even on the phone, if I have a list of things to do and phoning somebody or like phoning TELUS or phoning something, that's the last thing I'm going to do. And I could never figure out why. Why don't I want to talk on the phone? I like to talk, but it's because I can't understand if I don't see the person. So I'm learning all these strategies that I'm actually super intrigued about learning more about ADHD because, like you said, we all learn differently. And now understanding why I do the things I do is a superpower for me. Like it's awesome. I love being able to figure out why I'm doing things and being able to help others see why they're doing certain things. And it doesn't mean it's a disability at all. I think having ADHD is a total superpower because I can see things that other people can't see. I can hyper focus and get way more done than if I didn't have ADHD. So I'm actually having fun learning all about it but mostly understanding why I do the things I do.
Absolutely. And with respect to ADHD, has a problem with not with attention, but with channeling attention. So people with ADHD are functional by paying attention to everything that is going on around them. I wouldn't be able to do it. I would be highly inefficient. I need to concentrate to be efficient. I need to concentrate to be functional. So if there are tools that can help focusing to do with ADHD what you have to do, you will be 10 times more efficient than someone who isn't. So I love what you are saying. And I hope that everybody listening can understand that there is a balance between something that is perceived as negative and what that quote unquote negative can bring in practice. So I love that. And in fact, I would like to ask you what, for example, everybody else who doesn't suffer of ADHD or Tourette or any other condition under the neurodiversity syndrome have to understand to practice, for example, respect, compassion, and to provide the right support to someone that has these conditions.
So my big thing is my term is seek to understand. So if somebody is doing something that is different than you do it, just ask. I would way rather someone ask me why I'm doing something than to judge me or talk about me behind my back, especially when you're working with people. So for example, with ADHD, we process by verbally telling what is the problem. Other people can think it through, read it through, write it through, but we process by speaking. So if that's happening, and if you're with somebody and they're kind of like verbal diarrhea telling you what, something bad happened, ask them. Or if you are the one that has ADHD, explain it to people. Because if people don't know, they just don't know. And it's not that they are being rude or mean, they just truly don't know. And so that's what I am doing now. I don't use it as an excuse. I don't use anything as an excuse. I don't use ADHD, stress, anxiety. None of it is an excuse. I'm not a victim in any way. But now that I understand it and I can tell people and explain it to people, hey, you're going to see me twitching because I have Tourette syndrome. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with my face. I'm going to twitch. My arm's going to twitch. And, and then carry on. And then the people puts them at ease. They're like, oh, okay, cool. But if you don't say anything and they're, looking at you and you're making all these faces, they might think you're sneering at them or that you're laughing at them or whatever. And that's not it at all. So same thing with ADHD. If I can explain to someone, hey, I do way better on Zoom than on a phone call. Do you think we could just jump on a Zoom call? I don't think I've ever had someone say, no, I don't want to do that. Everybody's like, yeah, cool. Let's do that. And I know it's not hard. It's not easy. It's something that I've, learned over time. But if you could just practice it maybe on people that you love and people practice saying them, even though they know what you have, but just say to them, like practice with them and say, hey, I have ADHD and I process better verbally. Would you be up for listening to my issue today? And I know it's not easy. Some people are embarrassed by it, but just know it's not anything that you did in order to get it. It's just, you just were born with it. And learn more about it so then you can explain it to others. Yeah.
I completely agree with what you have mentioned here, because we tend to consider these conditions as a problem. So we shine away. And in what you're saying, there is the double sword, if you like. On one end, keeping the privacy of what's going on with you, and on the other, being open enough for others to understand, because obviously another person, as you said, they don't have a crystal ball, they don't know what's going on with you, so they have no reason to think, okay, this person has this condition, or rather the other one. So it is a difficult balance to navigate, I suppose. And perhaps the social pressure that we have on certain topics doesn't really help, I would argue. And with the social pressure, I would also relate and link the social media. The social media is dictating how we live and what we say and how we say it, and what we do and what we don't do. And it becomes very challenging to say, well, I have this condition. What is your thought about it? And how do you deal with the social media and the pressure from society?
So I deal with it a little bit differently than I used to, because I'm I'm a fitness coach. I teach piano. I'm always kind of in the more authoritative position. I have lived my life until now as a secret. I've kept all of it a secret until now, because I was striving for perfection, which is part of ADHD and Tourette's, but I was always striving for perfection. So I didn't want anyone to know that I was going through these things, because I thought, why would someone want to come to me as a fitness coach if I have anorexia? Why would someone want to come to me, teaching piano if I can't, remember certain things or whatever? But what I've learned in the last year and a half, my life has completely opened up by me being completely authentic. So when I wrote my book, there's things in the book that are very challenging to write about. Things that I did, I'm not proud of. And so I was scared to have it out there, because I was scared that I would be judged, and scared that, people wouldn't like me anymore because they read the book. Well, I have had more people private message me, or, send reviews on Amazon or whatever, that I touched them in a way that it opened up something within them to know that they aren't alone, and that they don't need to hide. And so now I tell everybody I have Tourette's. I tell everybody I have ADHD. I tell everybody that in certain situations I get anxiety. And so I feel that when people, and I'm included in this because I did it for my whole life, but when people pretend to be a certain thing, a certain way, they're not being authentic. You cannot live your life authentically if you keep pretending you're something else. And people will love you way more if you're just you, because we're all put on this earth to be authentic to us. And so by somebody saying, I have autism, or I have, dyslexia, or I have chronic fatigue, or I have fibromyalgia, it doesn't matter what you have. By telling people, it makes you human. And more people can relate to human than perfection. People don't relate to perfection because there's no such thing. And so if you live and you're private, and I'm not saying that you have to air all your stuff, I'm not saying that. But when you keep everything inside, it hinders you from being your authentic self, but it hinders others from knowing the real you and allowing them to be real back. And that's what I'm striving for now after this, all of this happened, is we're all great. We're all great in our own way. Everybody has something that makes them unique and awesome. And so live that, be that, do that, instead of trying to hide, things that maybe aren't perfect. Embrace who you are. Embrace it.
Totally. And in fact, taking again a little bit further, what can we do individually to stay resilient when things don't happen the way we think, and collectively to be more supportive of each other? Because I think that sometimes what is really missing in society is that sense of empathy and compassion towards each other. And what comes to mind are a couple of words like, for example, advocacy or activism, perhaps. My question is, are these enough? Is there anything else that we can do to create some sort of systemic change, perhaps in our society, so that we can support each other better, support trauma survivors, support people that are experiencing conditions that are very challenging already as they are, and perhaps prevent a combination of future and additional trauma to whatever they have already experienced?
I think the more we become outward focused and not inward focused, that's when things will change. I think that society is so inward focused right now, they're lacking compassion and empathy. If you see, if you see somebody that's maybe struggling with something, why don't you just go help them? Why don't you go ask them if they need help? Maybe not help them, but like ask them if they need help. The more we can ask questions and be open to the answers. Don't ask a question if you're not going to be, if you're going to be closed off, but be open to what the feedback is. And also, I think social media, like you brought up, social media can be a really hard thing. But if we can use social media, like, these podcasts and people using their social media for good, just think about how good the world could be instead of people that are using it for bad things and to talk about people. And again, if we can just use our platforms to be more honest and open, I think that more people can learn to be empathetic and understanding that we're all different. And that's what makes the world go round, is to have everybody different. It wouldn't be very interesting if we were all the same. So I just think, to be more empathetic and compassionate, put yourself in the person's shoes. Just really try. And I know that I am an empath, so it's much easier for me. And actually, that's a detriment sometimes because I care about people so deeply. And I know some people just don't have that, but just ask questions. If you don't understand why somebody's being a certain way or doing a certain thing, just ask them instead of judging, because you don't know what they're going through.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, are there any other advice or any other thoughts that come to your mind that you could suggest to someone that is going perhaps through a difficult time, on how to find resilience, how to be resilient, how to overcome that particular challenge and turn that challenge into a superpower, into something that inspires them, motivate them, and perhaps someone else as well?
So, it all stems, I believe, from loving ourselves. And so the tools I already gave I feel really important. And also, this is going to sound a little bit morbid, but I use this with my clients when I'm coaching. Write down what you want your best friend to say at your funeral. What do you want them to say about you? And then start living that life and then work forwards, but start at the end. Because if you want someone to stand up at your funeral and say you were compassionate, kind, and empathetic, and you aren't any of those, you need to start being those. So, as morbid as that sounds, it's a really good exercise. So write out what you want people to know and remember you for, and then live that. That's number one. Number two is write out what you like about yourself. And I don't mean what other people have said that are good about you. Take that away. Just get a piece of paper. Even again, if you can only write one thing, because I know a lot of people are in self-hatred right now, and I was there too. So if you can come up with one thing that you like about yourself, even if it's, preferably not a physical trait, but if it is, that's fine. If you like your eyes, write down, I love my eyes. And then when you go back the next time you do it, write down, I like that I'm kind to people. What do you like about yourself? And number three, if you're going to change something about yourself, make sure it's something you want to change, not something that someone keeps telling you. Like, for example, I kept getting told I was bossy my whole life. Well, I'm a great leader. I'm a great leader. Let's change the word bossy to leader. Change those negative words. I got told I, talk too much. Well, what do I do for a living? I talk. I need to be able to talk. So don't listen to what the negativity of other people. Write down exactly what you love about yourself and what you want to change and work on from what you want, not from what someone else wants. And it's very hard. I'm not saying this is easy at all. It might sound like it's an easy thing to do. It's not. It took me, I call it the Kari journey. I started my Kari journey when I was 35, and that's 22 years that I've been on this journey. And it's just daily things. It's just keep it up. And most people quit before they get to the good stuff because it's hard. But just keep going. Just keep getting up. Keep putting that foot down on the floor. Write out what you like about yourself, positive things. What can you be grateful for? And again, baby steps. I'm a huge advocate of baby steps. One thing a day is sometimes more than someone can handle. So just do one thing. And the other thing I would like to say too is buddy up with someone. But buddy up with someone that you know will hold you to be accountable. And it's not judgmental. They're not a mean person. They're just a really good support system that you can stay accountable to. That's what I would say.
Fantastic. A great exercise, especially the first advice of honesty and authenticity. So absolutely fantastic. I love that. Well, I would like to come back on you before we conclude this lovely conversation and ask you, what are you working on? What are you planning for the rest of the year? Is there anything that you would like to share with us?
Yes, I'm actually super excited. On my vision board, I do have a vision board and I do look at it every day. And I've always wanted to speak on stage. So I have a picture of myself with a microphone on a stage in the middle of my vision board. And I didn't think it would happen this soon, but opportunity came and I took it. So I'm speaking in Vegas in May at an event called Gatherama. And I will be telling my story on stage for 45 minutes in front of a group of people. So I'm super excited about that. And I'm writing my second book, which will be all about neurodiversities. So the umbrella being Tourette syndrome, and then I will talk about ADHD, OCD, anxiety disorder, and a little bit about ODD. I'll talk a little bit about that. And then just more podcasts. And eventually in next January, I will be starting my own podcast.
Oh,
So, yeah, super excited about that. And with this Gatherama that I'm speaking at, I also wrote a chapter in their Ignite Joy book, and that will come out May 18th. So I will have a chapter in there.
fantastic. So if our listeners would like to know more about you and what you do, where they can find you.
So my website is fit2 with the number 2 fit2motivate.net. So I teach fitness classes and I have some great retreats coming up, fitness retreats in the summer in Canmore, Alberta, where the Rocky Mountains are. So I'm really excited about that. And I do personal training, fitness coaching, and accountability coaching. So that's all on my website. And then I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I believe you'll have the links down below. And then I also have the book, Cut the Anchor, that can be found on my website as well.
Absolutely. And we will put, as always, all the links in the description of today's episode. Kari, very final question. If there was one take-home message that you would love everybody to remember from this conversation, what that would be?
Your past do not define you. Be your authentic self and forgive yourself for any past mistakes that you've made, because your past and your mistakes do not define who you are.
Very beautiful and very important thought. Thank you very much for sharing that. Well, dealing with trauma is undeniably fraught with challenges, both internal and external. However, amidst the darkness, there is a glimmer of hope. Through the power of resilience, we can reclaim our lives and rewrite our narratives. It's a journey that requires courage, vulnerability, and an unwavering commitment to self-discovery. And while the road to healing may be long and arduous, it's also a journey of profound transformation and growth. And with this in mind, I want to leave you with a quote from Khalil Gibran, who said, "Out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls. The most massive characters are seared with scars." Kari, thank you very much for accepting our invitation, for sharing so much about your life and your positive message that you are sharing with others as well, and your mission with your work. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, we would love to know what you think about this topic. Are you or someone that you know perhaps dealing with significant life challenges. If so, let us know how it's going. I hope that you will find my conversation with Kari very inspiring. But if you need more inspiration, then check her website, her book, and follow her on social media. You will find all the links in the description of today's episode. Hopefully not, but if you're being affected in any way by the topic we discussed today, as always, I invite you to seek professional help. Join me next time when we will continue exploring inspiring and challenging situations, because remember, we are together in this journey. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this content, subscribe to our channel and don't forget to hit the notification bell and like this video. See you in the next one.